Hey everybody, welcome out to this guide on how to use Tabletop Simulator with the new Legend of the Five Rings mod. So as just a brief kind of history, Legend of the Five Rings is a new living card game from Fantasy Flight Games based off of the old collectible card game made by AEG. And it's one of my favorite card games that I've ever played, and so I've just been really excited to kind of dive into it. I was lucky to snag a couple of copies of it because of Wrathful Strudel, who went to Gen Con and brought me back a couple of cores, but that just wasn't quite enough, and so I wanted to make sure that I could get into Tabletop Simulator and actually play with a couple of the people who are already playing with the game right now. I wanted to be able to learn that so that way I can show you guys how to do it, because I know there's tons of questions in the Discord, people trying to get it all set up so that way they can play games with people prior to release, and I'm sure it's going to be something that's going to be used going forward after the release too. So hopefully this will be really helpful to you guys, and let's just go ahead and get started. So for me, one of the first steps that I want to take after obviously you've already got Tabletop Simulator installed is go build an L5R deck. And so for that, somebody has made a fantastic tool, which I'm going to put a link to in the YouTube description below, so if you want to get to it really quick, you can just jump right over there. But this is pretty much it, just this L5R TTS deck generator. They've done a couple of helpful things by giving you an example and a card reference, and you can name the deck, which is basically going to end up being what the file is named and actually how it's found in Tabletop Simulator. So just use that as something that's going to be very helpful for you. But for now, just we're going to take a look at this example deck. So this is basically what it looks like when you build a deck. Some of these things are necessary, some aren't. So for instance, it'll kind of give you some of the notes up here where you can see anything with the little hashtag in front of it is going to be commented. So it's actually not helpful. What this actually ends up outputting as, in case you're any kind of tech savvy whatsoever, is it'll make a JSON file that Tabletop Simulator will then use to pull into the game and to have the deck there ready for you. So if you want to go in and edit it that way, you're more than welcome to do it. But if you just want to be able to use theirs so that way it can kind of output appropriately, that's fine too. So you'll have a separate section for provinces once you actually load in the game, a separate section for dynasty cards, and a separate section for conflict. If you want to keep it organized with these commented areas that tell you which cards are neutral or clan faction or your splash, whatever the case may be, that's fine. You can use those little commented sections. I just delete it out and type in the entire deck list because that's the easiest thing for me to do. Right now I'm using, some of the deck building sites that are out there to actually, kind of build my deck. It's a little more convenient that way, but then once I have the list, I go in and I kind of hand type it here. So for now, I'm just going to go ahead and just copy all of this. We're going to hop back here and paste that in. So you can see it all in there right now. And we'll just call this Test Lion. It's really helpful to look at the card reference. I actually ran into an issue where assassination was called assassinate in Tabletop Simulator instead. Potato, potato. If you're having trouble and it throws an error, just go take a look at the card reference. It'll probably show you what the expected card name is in there, and that'll be helpful for you as you're building. But from there, you can just click Prepare Deck, and you'll see that it goes ahead and makes the file, and then you can download it. And then it tells you exactly where on your computer you're going to want to put the file. Now, I'm not going to download it and do that right now, but this is pretty much what you need to do. So for instance, in the Mac, this is the folder that I'm going to want to do it. I have a couple of decks already put in, so we'll just go ahead and take a look at those. But just, download it, stick it in there, and then Tabletop Simulator will already have it. So if you don't already have the L5R mod, for Tabletop Simulator, that's actually really easy to get to. As you can see, I've already got it here, but if you just click on the workshop and you go to browse, let's take you to the Tabletop Simulator community where you can just search for L5R. And when you do that, there's going to be a few different options that you can choose from. The one that you want is this one that's like actually rated here. It's got the FFG box that they have made on it, so you can kind of tell the difference between these other ones. Some of these other ones I'm not entirely certain. They might be old CCG stuff, they might not. I'm not really sure what they are, but the one that you're looking for is this one by I Fight Dragons. That's the good one. So go ahead and click on that and subscribe to it by just coming down here, make sure that you're subscribed, and then that'll create a download option for you. And the next time you load up Tabletop Simulator, you'll be able to see it in here, and you can just go ahead and load it in. So let's load up, and it's going to show you the entirety of the board that you can play on. These are all kind of like little placeholder areas here for your cards. And there's a couple of other things that we'll get to here in a moment. But what I want to show you, just going through my notes over here, what I want to show you is basically how you load a deck. So I've got this Crab Splash Lion deck. You just go ahead and click on that, and it's going to start loading. So you'll see I've got my Dynasty deck, I've got my Conflict deck, and I've got the 7 Province cards from the deck list that I made in the TTS deck generator. And so that's all there. And now you just basically get into setup. So one of the other setup things, I'm looking at my notes here, as a reminder, don't forget to change your color, select a color. If you're playing 2-player, just pick the one that the other person didn't, or pick whichever one you want first. But one of you needs to pick each of the colors when you actually get into multiplayer and do this. Select your color, because that's going to be important for when you start drawing cards later, and load your deck in. And then you're pretty much good to go. So if you're new to Tabletop Simulator, a couple of things that you're going to want to know. Whenever you want to move a stack of cards, you're going to want to click and hold. And you'll actually see here that when you click and hold, it kind of has this pickup animation that you can then use to actually drag around. So click and hold, drag it over here to where your deck goes. This will be for your discard pile. Same thing over here, click and hold, drag it over here, and then you're good to go. With this provinces section, you get something a little bit different, because the cards kind of have to get assigned out a little bit. You're going to want to do it in a way that's maybe a little bit sneaky for your opponent. So you can, pull out your roll card, pull out your stronghold, set it whichever way you want, whether it's provinces down below or province up top. It doesn't really matter, because you're going to be placing cards over it anyway. And then you can do a couple of different ways. So you can kind of draw everything out. And take a look at it this way and say, oh, okay, here's where it is. But the problem with this is your opponent's going to be able to see all of this. And so if you want to, there's this little box over here. This is kind of like a hidden box. So you can kind of pull all of these, pull that stack over here, where you can then kind of work with them. Or the way that I kind of prefer to do it instead, when you get that stack right out the gate, before you start pulling your other cards off, get them all back into their little stack here. I like to just kind of flip them over so that way they can't be seen. And then I can actually search, say, oh, okay, I want to defend the wall. So defend the wall is going to be the one that goes to my province. And put that on top. And now I can kind of take a look and say, oh, okay, I want this manicure garden. So we're going to stick that here. I can just kind of draw them out. If you don't really care which one goes where, the other thing that you can do is you can shuffle. So you can just right click and click shuffle, or there's a hotkey for it. Hotkeys are super important. You can just hit R, and that will actually shuffle it for you, and then it doesn't really matter, and then you can just draw one off the top. If you just do a quick click and drag, that's how you actually get a card off the deck. So if you do the click and hold and then start dragging, that'll actually take the stack of cards. If you want to draw off of it, you just do a quick click and drag, and that'll be how you get that. So for instance, go ahead and shuffle up my Dynasty and my Conflict decks real quick, and then I can just click and drag, It's real easy, real quick. And so that's how I get that set up. And then if I want to look at these, hopefully I'm not getting too far ahead of myself. Well, if I want to look at these so that way I can do the mulligan, you actually want to hit Alt and then Shift, and then that's going to show you the card. And you'll get this little icon over it. So your opponent's basically saying, hey, I'm taking a look at this. And like they can see, hey, I'm looking at my card right now. But this is the way that you're going to want to mulligan. So, okay, Steadfast Witch Hunter, Borderlands Defender. So let's say that I don't want the Steadfast Witch Hunter. I want to do the mulligan. So I can just drag it out there. Let's say I want to get rid of this one too. Just for kicks. So then you draw, throw those cards back into your deck, and then, and then you just go ahead and shuffle them. And so that's your mulligan right there. And then when you want to draw your cards, you just go ahead and draw 4. Oops, that's one too many. Go ahead and stick that one back. I should also mention that if you want to move around, what I'm doing here is basically just your normal WASD movement. That way you can kind of move around. You know, take a look at cards that maybe your opponent's got real quick or whatever the case may be. But yeah, if you want to zoom in and actually take a look at cards, you can do that just by scrolling. And then you can kind of WASD to move around. And so the way that you mulligan fate, or at least the way that I like to do it, is I take a look at these and say, okay, maybe I don't want to bonsai, maybe I don't want to charge. And so I flip those over while they're in my hand and then place them out. And then draw 2 more cards. Boom, I've got my new cards. And then same thing, I just stick those back in my deck, shuffle it up, and we're good to go. And there I'm mulliganed. And one of the things that you need to know is anytime you pull a card out of this region, your opponent can see it. So that's why you want to make sure that you get it flipped beforehand, so that way it comes out flipped for the mulligan. And that goes for like if you draw the cards out here into your hand, if you try to take it over here into this little kind of hidden box where your opponent can't see stuff, that moment that it kind of leaves before it gets into the box, you're going to be able to get a glimpse of it. So it's just kind of like a good practice to flip it. And hotkey, again, for flipping card, just hit F, and that'll take care of that. So let's see, that is performing mulligans. And then let's talk about some of the other board pieces. So you can kind of see how this is coming together a little bit. And as you look around the board, a lot of this should start to make sense for you. So you've got your fate and your honor. Fate bowl, honor bowl. This little thing over here is going to help you to just kind of do things quickly. So if I need to quickly gain 7 fate, so there it goes. Oops, that's only 6. Oops, what was that? Oh, too many. All right, so you can see I grabbed too many, so now I can actually go ahead and just drop it back in, back down to 7. So it's got a little counter there for you, and I can start at my 10 honor, which I don't remember how many I just clicked. Looks like 10 exactly. Wow, that was fantastic. So you can get there really quick, and you can you know, put these on the board. You can hand them off to your opponent if you want. Well, that was the wrong bowl because that's a fate bowl, so you can just throw it out there and then let them grab it if they're going to like steal an honor from you or whatever the case may be. So there's your fate and your honor bowl. You know, when you play a card, you'll just flip it over and then say, okay, I want to pay for the Shrewd Yusuke. So I'm just going to pop out and put 2 fate back into the pool. Put that guy out, and if I want to put a fate on him, boom, there we go. And then if I want to move these guys around, I can just kind of do that drag select there, where I can just, you know, take them both, and then I can drag both the fate and the card around. I don't have to worry about accidentally just moving the one card instead of having both. Actually, it looks like it kind of sticks it on there. And if I need to take the fate off at the end of the turn, up there, then I can do that. Honor adjustments. Should be pretty self-explanatory. If I lose honor to the pool, I can drop it there. Again, like I said, if you wanted to drag it over to your opponent because they stole something from you, that's fine. If I need to gain, I've got it. No problem. Let's take a look at some of the other things. Over here, we've got dishonored and honored tokens. So if this guy's dishonored, and a lot of this is going to end up being kind of like on your honor, you know, because obviously it's not adjusting values there. But one of the cool things that it does have for you, in order to help you kind of manage like strength in your characters when you're in a conflict. This little guy over here, you can plus and minus it and say, okay, right now I have my Shrewd Yusuke, we're fighting a political battle, so I'm sitting at 2. And then I can, you know, potentially play other cards, like I can give him this. And so now I'm up to 3. And then this conflict is over, so I can just clear it out and good to go. So that'll work for helping you out in just kind of maintaining like a good, you know, count on how much strength you have in your conflict. One of the other things that's important is the honor dial. So if you, let's see here, come into the honor dial, you can see that it has the opportunity for you to set states to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. And ways that you can set this, you could just set it by flipping it over, because if you change the state here, You won't be able to see it unless your opponent, takes a look at it or something like that. But if you want it to be super private, one of the things that you can always do is just, bring it over here to this hidden area. Set it to whatever number you want, and then just pull it out again. So that's just kind of a nice way that you can kind of hide it where your opponent can't possibly take a look at it. So however you want to do it, depending on whether or not you're playing with friends or competitively, I think there are some quicker ways that you can do that. First player token, pretty self-explanatory. Imperial favor and rings. So over here, you'll notice there are the rings. They can be flipped for military or political. They also have that nice mouse over effect that tells you what they do. Can't knock that. And then Imperial favor as well. So you've got your political and your military, so you can set that however you like. And this is one of those things where like being able to rotate it, and if you're any kind of perfectionist like I am, that's got to have it facing the right way. So you can do that with Q or E, just to kind of get it rotate, and it's at like set intervals, so it's always the same no matter what as you go back and forth. So that'll be also how you bow characters whenever that's required. And that's pretty much it. If you need to put fate onto a ring, you can totally do that. Still kind of declare it and then take the fate off of it. Whoop. Take the fate off the ring. I don't know where that fate went, but if I swear earlier I was able to pull that off. There we go. So you can actually pull it off if you need to. Alternatively, if that's too difficult, you can always just set it by it, so you know that this fate works for this earth ring. Just kind of keep it in a position on the board. If it's gonna, hey, there's my my previous token that I got from flipping. So if you want to handle it that way, however you want to do it, that's fine. Just kind of talk to your opponent, see how they prefer to do things. So looking over at the extras, we have stronghold cards, province cards, dynasty cards, and conflict cards. And so you can just pull them out and then search them to get the cards that you want. This is kind of the way that they initially intended for you to build decks in there. If you want to do it on the spot, I think the TTS deck generator is going to be a much better way of doing it. Same thing with your keeper and seeker rolls. If you want to play with one that's maybe non-standard, you can do it that way. However you like. Stacks of other cards, we got to that, and hotkeys. So I think we pretty much got it. Again, just F to flip, R to shuffle, and then Q and E to rotate your cards. And that should be enough, I think, to get you going. I mean, you can look here. There are ways to randomly discard. When a card's in your opponent's hand, so if I just go ahead and throw that into their hand, if they've got multiple cards there, this is obviously not the same kind of card, you can technically just say, oh, I want that one instead, and then it'll pull out, and you'll be able to see it that way. And you can shuffle your hand before, or if it's just like a random discard, you can just say, hey, I'm just going to randomly discard that. Just depends on how players want to do that. So I think that just about explains everything. You should be able to get going with this from there. If you have any questions, make sure to check out the L5R Discord. Tons of super friendly people there in the LCG looking for group. A lot of people playing on Tabletop Simulator, so it's a great place to look. I'll drop that link into the YouTube channel, and then, or excuse me, into the YouTube video description, and then also just drop some comments, and we'll try to answer them as best we can, because we want to get you guys playing, because I think this is a super fun game. I think you'll really enjoy it, and hopefully we'll catch you on the table sometime. Thanks, everybody.